Greetings, this is Griff Ruby, the Nostalgic Catholic, with yet another Isaac Asimov review. And it does mention his name on the cover, though the picture goes to some other story. So, let's see what it says here in the table of contents. Does a Bee Care by Isaac Asimov, page 69. So, let's see what we have on page 69. Well, we do have one illustration, fairly straightforward one. It's simply a rocket taking off. The moon is visible in the distance. Since the rocket was built to go around the back of the moon, come back, and I don't know, whatever. They had it launching off of New Mexico. I guess in view of the fact that the original atomic bomb was detonated there, it made some sense, I guess. Who would have known they'd switch that one over to Florida, but whatever. Okay. So, it has this little squib here, which of course only appears in this location. It says, even 8,000 years is not too long when instinct drives a creature, and Kane was willing to wait. So, all the way through, these various people are talking about this one guy who dresses in green, carries a wrench or something around with him everywhere he goes. Doesn't seem to actually do very much of anything, but kind of becomes like a good luck mascot because it seems like people come up with great ideas when he's nearby. And, well, he smuggles himself from board the rocket because, well, okay, let's look at the final paragraph. It says, does a bee care what happens to a flower when the bee has done and gone its way? Or, does a salmon study cartography to find the headwaters of a freshwater stream in which years before it had been born? So apparently, even though he looks like a human being, he really isn't. Turns out he's thousands of years old and was, in his own small, subtle way, trying to guide humanity to the point of being able to become a spacefaring culture, and thereby launch off a rocket which would enable him to get off the Earth and send something of himself, whatever that would be, off in some direction in space, which I guess is where he came from or where he wants to go. The story has a bit of a discussion contained when he reprinted it in by Jupiter, with no apparent differences as far as I can tell. That's okay. It doesn't have to have anything there. So, well, it's kind of an interesting discussion of the life of the various magazines at the time. Back in the middle 1950s, when some of the less affluent science fiction magazines, not that any of them were really affluent, asked to be for a story, it was by practice to request the rates that Astounding and Galaxy paid if any magazine expected a story written especially for them. They would do so, quite confident that if I said a story was written especially for them, it was, and that it had not been slipped out of the bottom of the barrel. There are times when having a reputation of being so dumb as to be crooked, too dumb to be crooked, comes in handy. The corollary of that, of course, is that if a story of mine is ever rejected by editor A, it is incumbent upon me to tell this to editor B when I offer it anew. In the first place, a rejection of a story with my name on it must give rise to the thought as, wow, this story must be a stinker. And it's only fair to give the second editor a chance to agree. Secondly, even if the second editor accepts the story, he need not feel called upon to pay me more than his own standard fees. It meant an occasional loss of a few dollars, but it made me more comfortable inside my wizened little soul. Anyway, Does a Bee Care was written in October 1956 after I had discussed it with Robert P. Mills of Fantasy and Science Fiction, who had taken over the editorship of a new sister magazine of fantasy and science fiction, which was to be called Venture Science Fiction. So he actually wrote this one for Venture Science Fiction. I guess the execution fell short of the promise because Mills rejected it and was deemed unworthy for both venture and for fantasy and science fiction. So I passed it on to If Worlds of Science Fiction with the word of the rejection and got less than top rates for it. It appeared in the June 1957 issue. Now, the sad part is that I can never tell what there is about a story that makes the differences between acceptance and rejection, or which editor, the rejecting one or the accepting one, is correct. That is why I'm not an editor and never intend to be, but you can judge for yourself. And he presents the story itself. And at the end of this very short story, he says, going through Does It Be Care makes me think of the many editors with whom I have dealt, and with the way in which they sometimes vanish into limbo. There have been editors whom, for a period of time, I saw frequently, and with whom I felt quite close. Then, for some reason or another, they left their positions and vanished out of my ken. I haven't seen Horace Gold for many years, for instance, and I haven't seen James L. Quinn, who bought But Does It Be Care, and a few other stories of mine. He had a southern accent, I remember, and was a delightful person, and now I don't know where he is, or even if he is still alive. So, it's kind of a interesting little detail to talk about how these things go, but Does a bee care is, in other words, what kind of animal is this? Some kind of strange extraterrestrial animal that lives for a very long time and somehow seems to migrate from one planet to another by encouraging life kind on that planet, intelligent life kind, to evolve a technology sufficient to become a spacefaring culture. So it's a little short and moderately good. I don't know. Sometimes, different life that might be capable of intelligence in a certain way, or at least of inspiring intelligence, might itself be very much instinctual, almost like some animal. So, it's a fascinating thought, and I don't know. I think the editor who accepted it did the right thing, but maybe the one who rejected it just said, well, this doesn't fit with quite what I was trying to do right here, right now. Maybe at a different time, you might have felt different. Who knows? Anyway, that's Does a Bee Care? Thanks for listening.